you can't let them break your heart, and you can't, and you gotta roll with it, dude, or you're, you know, they'll, you know,
don't get in this
especially
business.
in this culture, it's so toxic.
This episode is brought to you by the best-selling book, Rise of the Film Entrepreneur, How to Turn Your Independent Film into a Money-Making Business. Learn more at filmbizbook.com. I'd like to welcome to the show, Charles Shire. How you doing, Charles?
I'm okay, man. Thanks.
Thank you so much for being on the show. I really, really appreciate it. I have been a fan of many of your films growing up for a long time, and specifically one that I refuse to go back to watch because I have daughters now is Father of the Bride. Because I have two daughters. I'm like, when am I going to actually have the courage to watch that movie again? Because I remember it so fondly. I was like, but now it's a whole other conversation.
Right. It's yeah.
It's brutal. It's a brutal conversation when you're a father, and I don't want to go there yet.
It's when you're a father of a daughter. It rings pretty true.
Yeah, exactly. And one of my daughters, it happens to be a tomboy and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of like, I don't.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
So before we get started, how did you get started in the business?
Well, basically, my dad was in the movie business, so I kind of came up through the ranks a little bit. I used to go onto the set with him when I was a kid all the time, like probably from the time I was 7 years old through my teenage years. I'd go on the sets with him because in those days they worked always 6-day weeks when my dad was making movies, and so I'd go on the set, and then it was kind of a natural. If he'd been in, a dry cleaner, I probably would have gone into the dry cleaning business, But, I went into the movie business and I was lucky enough to get into the DGA training program. I was one of the first people to get into that. And it was kind of, it was just starting out then. So it wasn't really well formed, but I did get some experience, and then I was lucky enough to become a second assistant director, and from there I went to work for Gary Marshall and Jerry Belson, and that kind of sprung me into a whole trajectory of writing, and I was their assistant,
Right.
I was Gary Marshall's assistant on a show called Hey Landlord, and basically, I was like 22 years old probably, but my job was basically, do their Christmas shopping, get their cars washed, buy them fudgesicles and shit like that. And then for that trade-off, I got to sit in on story meetings and stuff like that. And they welcomed me to do that. And they were very, very, they're very open about all that. And then, once in a while I'd give them, I'd pop in with my shitty idea, and they were so nice about it. They'd say, that's good. Keep thinking. And then Gary finally said to me, why don't you try to be a writer? And he introduced me to another writer, and he actually became my manager. Gary did. And he kind of guided me, through, a bunch of stuff. And eventually I became like the head writer on The Odd Couple the first year, and that kind of sprung me into, other stuff.
My God, The Odd Couple. Like I used to watch that show all the time growing up. And you also worked on Happy Days. I think one episode on Happy Days you wrote.
I did a couple of Happy Days, a couple of Partridge Families, I wrote a couple of Odd Couples. I wrote, there was a TV show called Barefoot in the Park back then. And, I bounced around in TV. I didn't really like TV in those days. It wasn't like it is today. It was kind of like an orphan to movies, and I wanted to work in movies. So.
Oh, I remember that. I mean, if you were a film actor, you would never in a million years do a television. That would be like, oh, you're over. Your career is over. So you're obviously retiring to television. Where now. Yeah. It's absolutely the opposite.
Yeah. It was definitely not the cool thing to do. So, and people would say, oh, he's a television writer.
Oh, yeah. They have to put you in the box. Yeah. There's no way you could, if you wrote Happy Days, there's no way you could write anything else but.
Right. Right, exactly.
How did you break out of it? Because I know that a lot of writers coming up today have that same problem. I mean, Hollywood still loves to put people in boxes. I mean, you're the horror guy, you're the romantic comedy guy, you're the action guy, and you can't jump back and forth. How did you break out?
I wrote a script. We wrote a script based on a book called Cut and Run about a young black guy who inherits, by mistake, is sent front row seats to the Lakers. He had applied for tickets and he got the wrong ones and he got front row seats. And he used those tickets. It was a really good idea, actually, to kind of manipulate his way into, all kinds of things, and became like, he used those tickets as his ticket. And anyway, it was a kind of a good script. And my agent sent it to Universal, somehow got wind of it and read it, and then they offered us Smokey and the Bandit for a rewrite. And it was I'm a guy from Studio City. I'd never heard of an 18-wheeler or a CB radio. I mean, I didn't know what the fuck that was. Shit. But it was a chance. Burt Reynolds was a big movie star then.
Oh, he was huge.
Huge. So we said yes, and we did it, and I didn't work on it that long, actually. I worked on it for probably 2.5 weeks, but it was day and night, working on it. And I did learn about CB radios. I did learn about 18-wheelers. I always loved country music. So, meeting with Burt was kind of cool. And
oh man. And that's Burt at, like, for people listening, you don't understand. People like know Burt Reynolds and stuff like that. But for there was a 5 or 6 year period that there was no bigger movie star in the world. He was the Tom Cruise of his day, the Brad Pitt of his day. There was just nobody even close to him. And Smokey was one of those reasons. I mean, Smokey was massive hit. Massive blockbuster hit for its day.
It was the number 2 movie of the year after Star Wars. So, I mean, it was, yeah. And what's weird is, I always say this, but, this was my first movie credit. So they paid us, I think we got paid, I think maybe $15,000 for the two of us. So it was $7,500 each, for this movie that made $300 million. The craft service guy made more money on the movie than I did. It's really weird.
But and welcome to Hollywood, I guess, at that point.
Yeah. It's the actress who, the joke about the Polish actress who comes to Hollywood and sleeps with the screenwriter.
Right.
It's, you're really treated pretty much like shit. But they were, and Hal Needham, who was like the only, it was the only DGA member, I'm sure, at that time who was packing heat. He carried a gun. He's a director with a gun in his waistbelt. But he was a good guy, and he was like a real shit kicker and would say things, you write it, I'll film it. And he was a courageous guy, do anything. And that's why the movie, they had those way out stunts.
So I was going to ask you, how many of those stunts were in the script, or was that all kind of just worked on set?
No, we put a lot of them in. I think like that. Some of those, when the top of the, I haven't seen the movie in a long time, but the top of the car goes under.
Jackie Gleason's car.
Yeah, we came up with that. When I first saw the movie, like back in the day, I was going. I thought it was really bad. I thought, oh my God, I can't believe it. But then I guess after Burt died, they did a 40th anniversary or something of the movie. And I took my kids, one of them who's sitting with me right now. I took my kids to go see it in a movie theater. And I realized that I saw it a whole different way. It really works. Jackie Gleason was great. Jerry Reed was great. Sally and Burt had a great chemistry. The music was great. And Hal did a good job. And Gleason was just fucking hysterical. He was just brilliant. So, it worked. The movie worked.
So after that, obviously your name is now you're a writer on a big Hollywood hit. So then you collaborate with Jack Nicholson. on a directing project, and he's an actor in it. What was it like collaborating with him on that level, not just as because you were a writer on that project, but how is Jack Nicholson as a director?
I think Jack in those days was off balance about comedy. I mean, I remember seeing because I'd write. We went down to Durango, Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we were shooting. And so I would, during the day, my partner and I would go to Jack's house, because he had housekeepers and all that shit. And we would write there because it was so much nicer than wherever we were living. But he studied comedy. He was very open, to suggestions and stuff. At that time, and maybe always, he's like the coolest guy you've ever met. I mean, he just is. I mean, with his shades and smoking dope and being cool and
is this pre or this is post Easy Rider, right?
Yes, post Easy Rider.
Okay.
But he was a huge movie star, and he was about to go to
The Shining.
Yeah. So he talked to Stanley Kubrick on the phone. I remember him, he'd call him Stan the Man.
Yeah.
And, he had nicknames for everybody. But it was fun. And the thing about Jack is that I think the challenge was, in many ways, he could keep going, even when we were shooting until 2, 3 in the morning, pitching and stuff, And, we were younger than him, but it was very hard to drop Jack. We would start to fade. Your eyes start to roll back in your head at a certain point, and he'd keep going. No, come on, let's keep going. And so you couldn't. He just had energy that I couldn't even imagine having. But he was a cool guy and a good guy. I really liked him a lot.
And then I remember a movie that you wrote that I remember became part of the zeitgeist at the time, was Private Benjamin.
Right.
When that came out, it was 80, I think. It was 1980.
Right.
And I was very young at the time, but I remember seeing it. I remember my parents talking about it. And I just remember it being, was it the first time there was a comedy placed in boot camp? Or was it just a twist of a woman with Goldie Hawn?
I think it was the twist of a woman. I think there was like Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis.
Yeah, Gomer Pyle, obviously. Yeah,
did a service comedy, but and Stripes came out after us. But I think it was the twist was this Jewish American princess who ended up in the army. That was the twist, and Goldie was perfect for that part, I mean, she just really knew how to play it. And her mom was Jewish, so she got it. And writing it with Nancy, who was a Jewish girl from Philadelphia, it just all came together for us.
Now, how do you approach working? Because you've written a lot of stuff with Nancy. How do you approach having a writing partner as opposed to writing by yourself?
Well, for me and Nancy, for everybody I've written with, I've written with Nancy. I wrote with Alan Mandel, and I wrote with Elaine Pope, and I just wrote a couple scripts with my friend Rebecca Connor. What you have to have is the same sensibility, and that's tricky because Nancy and I just, we just laughed at the same things. We loved the same movies. We kind of educated each other on the movies that each of us loved. And Nancy really made me laugh. I think she wrote the best one-liners of anybody I know except Neil Simon. I mean, she was up there with really writing great lines. And we were just always in sync. We as filmmakers had this thing that if we're doing something and one of us doesn't, like if we were doing a scene and one of us didn't agree with it, we would always try it another way. Mm-hmm. We would never say, nobody dictated what we're going to do. We'll find a compromise, or if one of us doesn't like it, we'll find another way to do it. And that was it was kind of almost unspoken. We just were in sync. Nance and I were very much in sync when we were making our movies. So we hardly ever disagreed. And she really made me laugh.
Now, when you were working on with a fresh-faced Whoopi Goldberg on Jumping Jack Flash, that wasn't your first. Was that your first directorial feature?
I didn't direct it. Penny Marshall did.
That's right. So which was your first directorial?
My first directorial was Irreconcilable Differences.
That's right. Yes, with Drew and Shelley Long. What was it like jumping onto that set? Like, as a director, because you've been around so many, obviously, directors.
That was the thing, Alex, that for me, being on a set was really, I knew, when I was 10 years old, I knew what a key grip did. I mean, I knew it all, so I was never, that was one of the things people used to say, you're nervous about directing your first movie. I really wasn't that nervous because I knew the milieu so well. I just was so comfortable on a set. I grew up on movie sets. So, and Nance and I had written the script. So that's the other thing. When you've written the script, you're not, the actors can't ask you a question that you don't know the answer to, Right. I mean, and it's, for me, that was very, very emboldening. And also Ryan O'Neal was, fantastic to work with. Whatever his reputation was in the world, he was just totally great and totally there for us. And Shelley was brilliant, and Sharon Stone, who we discovered in that movie. It was all right. It was very harmonious, and we just all really got along, and it was a really cool experience. And we saw the movie. American Cinematique did a screening about a year ago, and Nance and I went. We were both kind of nervous about seeing it again, but I thought it really held up, and it was pretty inventive, and I liked it. I thought it was a cool movie.
Now, when you're on set, I mean, every once in a while, I know all directors have to deal with this at one point or another, where you have especially when you're the young director, the first time director, you'll have the seasoned DP or the seasoned production designer or seasoned script soup, scripty, who starts, busting your chops a bit or, starts testing you. How do you approach that? I'm assuming you've had that happen in your life at one point or another on set.
Well, you know what it is? It's for me, what I realized that was going to happen, and, what I never wanted to do was, what I realized after the first time I blocked a scene, you have these guys with the turquoise belts standing there watching you, saying he doesn't know what he's doing, and I said, I'm not doing this shit. So I realized early on, clear the set, just me, the DP, the script supervisor, and the first assistant director, and the actors, and Nancy, if Nancy was there, and I block it that way so nobody's watching. I don't have to worry about it, and the actors, then we bring everybody in. So, and on Irreconcilable, Billy Fraker was the DP, who, right. He was a kind of a brilliant DP and a great guy, and was there for us and had worked, with Warren Beatty when he first directed Heaven Can Wait. So he was very good with first time directors, and he was just so kind to us and just really knew what he was doing. He was a cool guy. So that helped a lot. And he really did a beautiful job,
But that's how you handled this. So you cleared the set, did everything, and then brought everybody in.
Yeah, because guys are shaking. You look over and they're shaking their head. Like you could fucking do it better, dude. Come on. But
it's always that way. I mean, I'm assuming, I don't know if it happens to Steven Spielberg, but I'm assuming somebody out there is going, I could have done that better. Like,
right. He doesn't know what he's doing. And and you know what? I don't. You're right. Right. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm trying to figure it out, But you know what it is? It's like if you're writing a script and somebody's looking over your shoulder while you're writing, you go, what the fuck? You can't, give me a break. I mean, that's why Martin Scorsese has a rear view mirror, on his monitor when he's shooting, so he can see if people come up behind him.
Oh, I didn't know that. Really?
Yeah. And I'll never let. I always make the producers have their own monitor, so I'll be there sitting with the script supervisor, and my favorite DP operates himself. so he can come over and look at the playback if he wants. But I don't ever have anybody around me. I mean, I'll have my son or my daughter or something like that, but nobody who's going to shake their head.
Do you ever let the actor watch?
Yeah. Sure, I would. This last movie I did, I was so lucky because it was a very difficult shoot, but I had the nicest actors ever that I've ever worked with.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Justin Hartley was as nice as anybody and cooperative as anybody I've ever worked with. So that was really cool. That helped me through it.
Now, how do you balance confidence on set with when you are just like, hey man, I just don't know what we're going to do here. Let's figure it out. Because it takes a strong director who's very comfortable in their own skin to just say out loud, guys, I really don't know what we're going to do here. I'm open to ideas. Let's figure this out together. That doesn't happen often, especially early on in your career, unless you're very comfortable with yourself. How do you approach that confidence and also just confidence of not knowing because we all don't know the answers at all times as a director.
No. Well, first of all, I storyboard. I'm not cocky enough to just go in and wing it. So I storyboard everything, right. I storyboard everything. And if I don't storyboard it, I map it. So I know where. In other words, if I have a dinner scene, I'll know before the actors get there where everybody's seated. I'll diagram it and stuff. So I don't. I think you have to instill in the actors confidence in you. And luck. What I didn't realize, like on this last movie I did, I've done so many movies now that they assume that I know more than I know, but so which is kind of comfort, which is nice actually, because it kind of will just follow whatever you want to do. And certain times I say, I don't know, I'll change things in the middle. This isn't working, and I think if you're honest, they'll understand unless they're jerks. And I guess, I've worked with some actors who have really been really not nice. And it makes you uptight. You don't want to freeze up, but I don't know. It's a challenge.
It's a challenge to say the least. But I have to ask you, I was asking you earlier, when you worked with Whoopi on Jumping Jack Flash, or did you work with him? Did you work with Whoopi at all? Writing that or anything?
We rewrote the script, and when we got the script, it was actually a drama.
Oh God. It's a little different.
Comedy. Yeah. And then for some reason, I don't know, Nance and I were kind of arrogant in those days. We didn't want to put our name. Our names aren't on. Or didn't we use pseudonames?
You did use pseudonames, yeah. But it's on your IMDb. But you did use a pseudonym. Yeah,
we used pseudonyms, which was so ridiculous. But I don't even know. I know that the first director who did it was Howard Zeef, was on it, who had directed Private Benjamin and directed another movie I did called House Calls with Walter Matthau and Glenda Jackson. But Howard and Whoopi somehow didn't get on, and Howard got fired. And then Penny Marshall came on and did it. And to be honest with you, I don't think I've ever seen the movie.
Fair enough.
I don't think I have. If I have, I have no recollection of it. But I know Whoopi was, I've talked to her a few times about it, and she was very sweet about we did a really good rewrite on the script, and we did make it funny. I just don't know if it was a very good movie because I never saw it. So.
Right, but it did okay at the box office. It did okay, and she ended up doing all right in her career. Mm-hmm. Not too bad. Yeah. Not too bad. Now, what is your approach with directing actors? How do you pull those performances out, especially comedy, which is so difficult? I mean, obviously casting is a very big part of that, but how do you kind of, corral or pull those performances out?
Casting's kind of, it can't be overstated how important casting is, but I mean, look, you can, it's different with every actor. Like with Steve Martin and Diane Keaton, Nancy and I would actually, and they liked this, Nancy and I would actually go into the set and work out the scene ourselves, and then we would act it out for them, literally.
So it's a step away from a line reading.
Yeah, it's a step closer than a line reading.
Exactly.
We would act it out. I would do the blocking. I remember we did it several times, and Diane and Steve loved it. They loved that. Oh, great. Okay, I know exactly that. Well, and then they'd make it 1,000 times better.
Of course.
But so we would do that a lot, and then I will give line readings, or I'll keep going till I know I have something that I can use. It's not like Broadway. You're not coming back tomorrow night. You better get it now. Now, oftentimes I'll think, oh, I can loop this reading or this intuition, this the way they're saying something. But it's when somebody's not funny or they don't have rhythm, you're kind of up against it, man. You've miscast.
Yeah, and I think, and for people listening, comedy is all about timing. It's all about the beats, and it's literally fractions of a second that something's funny and something's not. It's
frames. It's 6 frames.
It really comes down to that. I mean, I've been an editor for most of my career, and I've cut comedies, and I've cut with some very accomplished comedians who were like, nope, that beat's off on the beat, and it's all about that timing. And I'm assuming because you've done so many comedies in your career, you can kind of sense those beats on set when you're directing.
Yeah, it's a weird thing because I don't believe that it's something you can learn. My dad was funny, and I think you kind of inherit it. And, our daughter Hallie, Nancy, is a accomplished now writer director. But you grow up with a certain kind of humor in your. I don't know, maybe not everybody, but for me that was real helpful. And then I always loved comedies, like. I liked comedies and I like westerns. I like movies that took place in outer space. I wasn't interested in. I just didn't dig them at all. And still don't. But Billy Wilder movies, I always thought, or Preston Sturges or Howard Hawks, or those guys. I mean, those are the movies I really loved. Or like 20th Century. Like Carol Lombard. I mean, but that was the thing though. Back in those days. They had actresses like Carol Lombard, Barbara Stanwyck, Irene Dunn, people who could just knock it out of the park, these women who you don't really have them anymore like that. I don't know why, It's not, I know exactly what you mean. You didn't have to give them line readings, dude.
Really, They were just masters. It's like, they were just masters. It's like walking on a Hitchcock set in his prime. He's just like, he doesn't even look, what are the rumors? He never looked at the camera.
It was like,
He just just give me my storyboards and let's move on.
I was looking at the leading ladies though a lot apparently.
That's what the rumors were. Now, when you write, do you begin with plot or with character?
I would say plot, definitely.
Really?
Well, yeah. This new movie that I wrote is kind of autobiographical, so I started with the character, but the plot was about my life, so it was kind of intermixed. But I would say more than not. Like the hook of the movie, or I would think more plot, but the characters intertwine with that. It's hard to separate them.
Well, of course you need both, but I always love to know what's the genesis of the ideas. Like I have this idea for this caper, and then I'm going to create characters in it, or I'm like I've got Indiana Jones, and I could create an adventure for him.
Right. See, for me, it would be more. The caper would come first, I think, for me. Like with like with Benjamin, it was more, the situation: a Jewish girl joins the army. I have that. Then I can go from there. Or irreconcilable, a kid, wants to separate from her parents. All right, well, who are they? Then you start going, or who is she? Who is the Jewish American princess? Or that kind of thing, basically.
Now, how did you get involved with Father of the Bride and trying to remake a classic?
Yeah, Steve Martin contacted us. I mean, he had 3 people he liked. He had seen Baby Boom and really liked it, and there was a script already written that he didn't love, and I remember. So we loved Steve so much, and it was like an honor. And he was in New York, so Nance and I hadn't. First of all, I had never seen the original Father of the Bride. I didn't even know it existed. It wouldn't be my kind of movie necessarily. But I remember, so we said, yes, let's go meet him. God, fuck, are you kidding me? So we got on the airplane, and I hadn't read the script yet, right? Because I just knew I wanted to.
That's Steve.
I read the script, and I wanted to jump out of the airplane.
Was it that you just were not a fan?
I thought, Jesus, man, this is awful. But we went in and met with him, and I think he had 3 different people. He was me and Nance and 2 other people, and we met with him, and he said, yeah, let's make it, and that was cool. And then we went back and we kind of watched the movie, or I guess we watched the movie the night before we met with him in the hotel or something. Maybe Nancy had already seen it. I don't know. I hadn't. And then we just went ahead and what's good about a movie like that is when somebody is so clearly identifiable in the way they act and everything, it's easier to write for them. So we wrote it for Steve, knowing what Steve could do. And then, we had made Baby Boom with Diane, so we had to shoehorn her into the script. Nobody wanted her.
Really?
Yeah, nobody.
Why?
Because they said that she was the kiss of death. She'd made movies that had bombed after, and Baby Boom was not a hit. And they kept pushing. You can't believe the kind of actresses. We fought for her, and finally they gave in. But
you would think it's Diane Keaton, for God's sakes,
Dude, Annie Hall, come on.
Come on.
I know.
Godfather. Crazy. Come on. It's
Yeah, no, but you have no idea. Well, yeah, a lot of times in movies, and maybe in any job, your boss is dumber than you.
Shocking, right? I know it's shocking. It's shocking. Yeah.
No, but you know what I mean. And
of course,
how did they get to be my boss? Because and they're and for most of the times they're the people who hated me in high school. So
right?
And
exactly.
It's hard. You have to, and you have to have that technique of when they give you an idea, you have to say, that's a good idea, but how about we do this instead based on your idea, which is not based on their idea at all. It's just massaging them. Yeah. It's like that Mike Nichols said, executives thinking having a note is a creative thing. And it's not really. I mean, anybody can have notes, but, yeah, it's hard. It's you got to play the game.
But you got her. So you obviously got Diane in. But so we're working with someone like Steve, who at that time I think he was at the height of his powers as well. He was a huge star at the time. Yeah. How much was he riffing on set? Because
he's a very, very polite person. So he would always say to us, when you have what you want, when you have it the way you want it, like we're shooting a scene, when you have it the way you want it, tell me because I have an idea, And then he would do his idea, which was invariably better than anything we had. And every time it was his idea, it's in the movie.
Oh, really?
It's really funny. But he never would say, he always wanted us to get what we wanted first. And then he would do it, which is kind of brilliant.
It's a smart way of approaching it. Because if like him or Robin Williams or someone like that just are just spewing genius constantly, and then you're like, because I've spoken to many people who've worked with Robin. I'm like, how did you handle Robin on set? And you just get what you want once, and then you just let them loose, because it's just, and again, most of the time what Robin gave
gold. It's gold. Yeah, because they're better than you. I mean, you deal with it.
You're working with geniuses. I mean,
yeah.
And Steve is that. And Steve is that guy.
Yeah, and he was also really sweet about everything. So I mean, it was really kind of he fit that role fit him like a glove too.
Oh, it's remarkable. And then Kimberly. the daughter, the story was that she came in as a friend of somebody who was auditioning, and then
no, that's not really true. But I she was going to Northwestern at the time, and she was like, I don't know if she'd even done anything.
She had done nothing. She said
nothing. No, but and a lot of women who became stars, Gwyneth Paltrow, Scarlett Johansson, a lot of people auditioned for that role, but none of them seemed exactly right. And then Kim came in, and I don't know, she just rang the bell for us. It was like Lindsay in Parent Trap. She just felt right. She was innocent, and we kind of wanted an unknown. And I don't know, she rang the bell for us. That's what Lubitsch used to say.
It's just like there's a thing that you can't quantify. When the right actress or actor walks in, it's nothing that you can explain. You just like, but that's just it. And then I'm assuming when they got together with Steve, and Steve was like, well, this is obviously this is.
Yeah, we screen tested her. I know with Steve, maybe with Diane too. I think with Steve for sure. And yeah, it was just, she was right. But you're right. When you have that feeling, just go with it.
Listen to the gut. Don't ever. Oh my God, is that like the best advice you could give somebody right now? It's just like, listen to your gut, because I've not listened to my gut so many times in my career, and it's always screwed me.
Alex, Nancy and I used to have a thing on our monitor that actually said gut, G-U-T. It's good, just so we'd remember, because you're absolutely right. That instinct you have to go with.
Yeah, because if you let this get in the way, if you let your brain get in the way, you're done.
Yeah, you'll improve it into a failure, as Billy Fraker used to say. Yeah, but that's exactly what happens. Yeah.
Now, after Father of the Bride was a monster hit.
Yeah,
very big hit. You've already done a few hits already, but Father of the Bride, was that one of the biggest of your career at that point?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, we got nominated for an Oscar. We won the Writers Guild Award for Private Benjamin and got nominated for an Oscar. So that was a pretty big hit and a pretty big success for us. But yeah, I guess I don't know. I know it was a pretty big deal when it came out. Did doors open a little bit faster for you after that? Well, actually, for me and Nancy, I don't think we ever wrote a script we didn't sell. Just honestly, I mean, we were riding high. We could kind of do what we wanted back then.
Right. It was in the height of your powers at that point. Yeah,
and it was the height of time where they made movies for, not like today where
$20 million, $25 million.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Today it's really a battle.
Now you got to go with streamers. Streamers are making those kind of $25 million, $20 million movies.
Yeah, I mean, and I luckily got in with Netflix, and I've loved working with them creatively. Financially, it ain't the best situation, but creatively, they've been pretty fantastic.
Yeah, I hear they just let you go once it's
they let you go. I mean, I don't. They hardly give us any notes on the scripts. I mean, maybe that's because the scripts are good and stuff, but and they're not jerky about it. They don't dictate. I'll give you a little. When we were doing Father of the Bride, Jeffrey Katzenberg, we had these preview, and we got these numbers like Lion King numbers,
Yeah,
at the
right.
previews. I mean, they were like huge. But and Katzenberg said to us, look, I have some notes. I'm going to give you these notes, but all I'm asking is that you read the notes and you try them. You don't have to ever show me. And if they work, fine. If they don't worry about it. And it was like it was so freeing. And we did try some. We tried them all, and if they worked, we kept them in. If they didn't, we did, and we never heard from them again. And that was it. And that was such a cool thing. And that's kind of the way Netflix is. They say to you, we have an idea, try it. Tell me what you think. If you guys disagree, tell us. So I mean, they're very open about that creatively. So that's great, and that's almost but not quite a even trade-off for not getting paid money.
So, but please let everybody know that that's generally not the way it works in Hollywood. That you generally don't have freedom and have creative.
No, you don't. You don't.
You know, how did you deal coming up? Like, what was like the worst scenario on and you could tell the name of the film or not, that you just had to like fight tooth and nail for your vision?
Well, I remember once the head of Warner Brothers called me and Nancy into a meeting and had notes on Private Benjamin, and we looked at, and he had this fucking script with, like, you know how you turn down the pages?
Oh, dog-eared it, yeah.
Yeah. There must have been 50 turn downs on his script, you know? And by the time he got to the fourth turn down, Nancy and I were so prepared, and Nancy especially was so tough that he closed the script and said, "I can't do this." And he stopped giving us notes.
Really? But what did you guys do? So what did you guys do?
Well, we just said, well, if you do this, you know, a lot of times it's like a domino thing. They have an idea and it affects, you know, the third act or something. You know, they just don't think shit out. So, you know, and they were also idiotic ideas, you know, a lot of them, you know, like
shocking.
Like they didn't like. I remember when Kim met her boyfriend in the movie. They were watching, I don't know, His Girl Friday or one of these movies, one of these Hawks movies, and they wanted us to make it a more contemporary movie. You know, it's all this shit that you go,
well, who cares?
Shut up. Yeah, who cares? It's right. But they want to put their imprint on the movie in some way. So I guess they can tell their wives or girlfriends or boyfriends.
That was my idea.
Yeah, exactly right.
That was my idea. Oh, you see they were going to make a Howard Hawks movie there, but I put in E.T.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah.
Something like that.
I mean, I made him use James Cameron, you know, which is funnier, you know. So, I don't know. It's, you know, look, you just deal with it. But you can't let them break your heart, and you gotta roll with it, dude, or you're, you know, they'll, you know,
don't get in this
especially
business.
In this culture, it's so toxic. You fuck up, you can be gone forever, and we see that all the time with people. So.
It's not like, I mean, oh God, imagine the things that were said or done in the 80s, 70s, or 80s. No. I mean, Jesus Christ. How could...
No, and the way the directors like Otto Preminger, George Stevens, and guys like that who would scream at the crew.
Oh, my God. Legendary.
You know, you can't do that anymore, man. You know, they'll go to HR and you'll be, you know.
Joe Pitt guy.
I had a problem on my last movie with the production designer, and you know, because it just wasn't happening, and I got pissed off, you know.
They were screaming. They were screamers.
Yeah, and Netflix got really upset about it because the production designer quit. But I was glad he quit because he was no good. You know? That's one of the problems when you make a lower budget movie. You often get lower
quality
caliber.
Yes, lower caliber
like
people
and friends, you know, and. You know, I mean, people who make good money make it for a reason.
There's a reason why Ron Howard waits for his first AD.
That's right.
There's a reason. He's like, I can't shoot until I have him.
Like the first AD I just worked with, I don't know that my movie would have turned out. I know it wouldn't have turned out as well without him, or with my friend who's a DP. You know, I fought for certain people, and you know, they help make the movie with you. You're not alone. You know?
One thing I want people to be, and I've said this 1,000 times on the show, I want people to be very clear about this. No matter who you are, no matter what age you're at, what level of the business you're at, you still got to fight. Everyone's got to fight. Oh, you're going to get punched in the face constantly because there's an illusion. There's like this kind of myth out there. It's like, oh, well, you've been nominated for an Oscar. You won an Oscar and you've made hundreds of millions of dollars. Like they just roll up and just throw money at your feet and you could do whatever you want. That's not the reality of the business.
No. Also, you're fighting nature. You're fighting all these kind of, things where the actor doesn't get it right. You know, I can't tell you how many times I would bury my head in my, I hate this fucking movie. You go, I can't do this. This is flipping me out. Or you wake up in the middle. The other thing is that you realize, it's Billy Wilder said this, every day after you wrap on the drive home, you realize how you should have shot the scene you just shot.
Isn't it Marty? Isn't it Marty who says, if you don't look at your movie at one point and go, this is absolute crap, you're not doing it right?
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, the first time we looked at Private Benjamin, we thought career ender. We'll never.
We're done. We'll never
work again.
Let's go make cookies.
At assembly, and same with Baby Boom. We thought, this is it. We'll never work again. And we didn't blame them for never hiring us again.
Right.
It just. It takes so much work to get it right. And then a lot of times you can't get it right because it doesn't work. That's, does the movie work?
Right, exactly. And I just want to talk about Parent Trap because honestly, it is one of my favorite. Like my family and I love it. I introduced my daughters to it. How did you approach doing that classic? Because that was a beloved classic.
Well, that was more Nancy's idea than Mike because Nancy had loved the Parent Trap, the Haley Mills version.
Yeah.
And we were at Disney anyway at the time. And so we went to Jeffrey Katzenberg and said, we want to remake it. And that came kind of naturally. That was it was fairly, again, this was more Nancy than me because I didn't really, I loved Haley Mills and I thought the original movie was really good and I liked Brian Keith. But I don't know, it was kind of not an easy rewrite, but it was something that came very naturally to us. And then when we got Lindsay,
right.
That was striking gold, really.
Yeah, that was when she was
amazing. She was amazing. I mean, she was 11 years old and just could act her ass off. I mean, she was just great. And it launched her, obviously. And Natasha was great.
Oh,
Natasha,
God. And Dennis, and Dennis.
Yeah, sought us out, actually. She wanted the part. We didn't really even know her work that well, but she was so perfect for the role. I mean, we got very lucky. All the casting on that movie really worked out.
Yeah, and I mean, after watching that movie when I was younger, I was like, I got to go to Napa. I mean, that's just gorgeous.
Yeah. We shot a lot of that on the Coppola estate.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've been at that estate.
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
yeah.
It's such a stunning estate.
Yeah, it was great. And also, hey, because Dean Tavoularis did the production design on that movie. Mm-hmm. He did all Coppola's movies, So he got us in with Francis. So we spent time with Francis. And that was just all pretty great.
That must be pretty cool hanging out with Francis.
Yeah. And having Dean Tavoularis do your movie is pretty incredible too. He's like a genius. He's amazing. Like Cameron Mendes, one of these. He's maybe the best production designer, one of the top 3 or 4 of all time.
That's amazing. And I'm going to ask you a few questions. I ask all of my guests. What advice would you give a filmmaker trying to break into the business today?
Oh, Jesus, man. I don't know. I mean, my son who's sitting here with me wants to do it. And I think, number one, if you would, do you want to be a filmmaker? I don't know what that means. Do you want to be a writer or a writer-director? I think to be a director, it really helps to be able to write your own movie. Because if you don't, you're going to have to make films that knock people out. They'll let you direct. But if you write a script, you can kind of handcuff yourself to the script if it's good enough, and say that's what we did with Irreconcilable. We said we're not gonna go with another director, but I think it's really hard today. I guess maybe with streaming and stuff, you come up with a really strong idea, but if you write it yourself, I know you increase your odds tremendously.
Now, what is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film industry or in life?
I think it took me a long time to realize I'm better than I think.
You mean imposter syndrome, getting over imposter syndrome?
Yeah. Exactly right. On this last movie, I started to really feel a sense of accomplishment for what I've done. Like one of the weird things that happened on this movie, this crew, the thing that they were most impressed that I'd ever done was Smokey and the Bandit. And,
it is a pretty cool credit, I have to say.
No, but I was, my head was spinning. I'm going, what are you talking about? Why would that be? No, you don't understand. It changed my life. And, like Justin Hartley has that the car that Burt Reynolds drove in the movie. I mean, I'm going, well, geez, all right. But starting to appreciate what I've done was something that took me a long time to really embrace.
And 3 of your favorite films of all time?
I would say Oh Lucky Man, Lindsay Anderson movie. Do you know that movie?
I don't know that movie.
Oh, you don't? Oh,
I have to see that movie.
It was Malcolm McDowell.
Man.
That I would say All About Eve.
Mm-hmm. Great movie.
Yeah. Probably. I have more. The Apartment, 20th Century, and I think Back to the Future is one of the best screenplays ever.
It's as perfect of a film as ever been made, honestly.
Yeah, it's like The Apartment is a perfect movie.
Correct.
Perfect,
Yeah, and that's been mentioned many times on the top 3 here at the show of The Apartment.
And then All About Eve, the dialogue is like, forget it. Who writes like this? I mean, who writes? You're too short for that gesture. I mean, who writes lines like that?
That's
really
awesome. And what's your next project that's going to be coming out?
Well, I'm editing this movie now that will be out. It's actually not coming out till Christmas of 2022, but because we don't finish until February. But then I'm going to try to do this autobiographical movie that I've written. That I have a sneaking suspicion that I'll probably do it with Netflix again. So I'm going to do that because I like working there. If I can only get them to up the salary a little bit, I'll be fine.
Hopefully they'll watch this and maybe they'll take a hint.
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah. No, it's a nice place to work, though, I have to say.
Charles, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you, man. It is. Cool. Thank you so much for being on the show and bringing so much joy and happiness to people around the world for all the years you've been doing this, man.
Oh, you're too kind.